Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own home? Not because you vanished, but because someone else did first. Not physically, but emotionally. Imagine sitting at a dinner table thinking you're part of something, only to overhear the truth you were never meant to hear. Oh, please, he's just a roommate now. And just like that, everything shifts. Suddenly, you see what's been there all along, the quiet distance, the fading warmth, the space between you growing wider every day. Now comes the choice: stay invisible or walk away. This is a story about awakening, heartbreak, freedom, and the price you pay to reclaim yourself. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. I never thought I would hear my wife speak about me in such a way. We had gone out for dinner with her friends, an event she had carefully organized weeks in advance. I hadn't been eager to attend. These gatherings always played out the same way. She would be immersed in conversation while I sat on the sidelines, acknowledging the occasional glance, but never fully included. This time, however, I wasn't seated right beside her. The restaurant was crowded, and we ended up spread out along a long table, leaving me a few seats away. Perhaps she assumed I was too far to overhear. At first, I wasn't even paying attention, my thoughts drifting to work, weekend plans, anything but the conversation in front of me. Then a question sliced through the hum of voices, pulling me back in. "So, how's married life treating you?" one of her friends inquired. Her response? A laugh. A short, dismissive chuckle, followed by words that lodged themselves deep into my mind. Oh, please, he's just a roommate now. A roommate. Just that. The rest of their exchange became a blur. My mind went blank. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. There was no warmth, no amusement, no affection in her tone, only an indifferent acceptance, as though this was a fact so obvious it required no further thought. Worse still, her friends didn't react with shock. They nodded, chuckled, carried on as though this was a sentiment they had heard before. A weight settled in my chest. I wasn't angry, not yet. I wasn't even hurt, not immediately. I was simply stunned. Was this truly how she saw me? A man who merely occupied the same space? My mind sifted through the past few months, perhaps the past year, searching for the moment when things had changed. When had I stopped being her husband and become just another presence in our home? Had I been blind to it all along? I was never under any illusion that I was perfect. No one is. But never once had I thought of her as anything other than my wife. I worked hard. I supported her. I tried. And yet, here she was, reducing me to nothing more than a person who shared her living quarters. The evening crawled forward in a fog. I barely spoke. I didn't react. I certainly didn't confront her. What would have been the point? To make a scene in front of her friends? To demand an explanation with an audience? No. I refused to grant her the satisfaction of knowing how deeply those words had cut. But something shifted in me. For the rest of the night, I observed her differently. The way she barely acknowledged my presence, the ease with which she engaged with everyone else while I faded into the background, the way she laughed, so freely, so effortlessly, without once glancing my way. And suddenly, the truth was undeniable. I had already been living as her roommate. I just hadn't realized it until now. When we got home, I said nothing. I didn't bring it up. I didn't seek an apology. I was still processing, still trying to grasp what it all meant. But one thing had become clear. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I didn't know what my next step would be, but I knew one thing for certain. I would not continue living like this. That night, the silence between us was heavier than usual. She moved through her routine as though nothing had changed, slipping off her shoes, pouring herself a glass of water, scrolling through her phone. No hesitation, no glance in my direction, no acknowledgement of what she had said. That was when I knew I had to say something. Why did you say that? My voice cut through the quiet. She barely lifted her eyes. Say what? At dinner, when they asked about our marriage. She furrowed her brows slightly but remained fixated on her screen. What are you talking about? You called me your roommate. That made her pause. She finally met my gaze, rolling her eyes as if I were making a big deal out of nothing. Oh, that? Come on. It was just a joke. A joke. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. You didn't sound like you were joking. She exhaled, setting her phone down with an air of frustration. You're being too sensitive. It was just something to say. I didn't mean anything by it. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to tell myself I was overreacting, that it had been a meaningless remark. But I knew better. Deep down, I knew. You didn't mean anything by it? I echoed, shaking my head. So if I said the same about you, if I told my friends you were just my roommate, you wouldn't care? She scoffed. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't take it so seriously. I studied her face, searching for any flicker of regret, any trace of understanding. But there was nothing. Only impatience, as though I were the one turning this into a problem. You've said that before, haven't you? I posed the question, and for a fleeting second, she hesitated. That brief delay spoke louder than any words ever could. A dull pressure settled in my chest as understanding dawned. This wasn't just a careless remark, not a momentary lapse in temper. No, this was something she had thought about before, something she truly believed. It wasn't merely the words themselves that stung, it was the weight behind them. She had already distanced herself from this marriage, perhaps long before I ever noticed. Maybe I had been chasing the remnants of something that had already withered away. Rage didn't come, not yet. Instead, an exhaustion unlike any I had ever felt crept into my bones. You don't see me as your husband anymore, I murmured, though the words were meant more for myself than for her. She let out a sharp breath, pressing her fingers to her temples, as though the conversation itself was an unbearable burden. Do we really have to do this right now? She asked. And that was it. No explanation, no regret. Just an attempt to brush it aside, to avoid the confrontation altogether. I nodded, slowly. All right, I said, my voice calm, resigned. Then I turned away, heading for our bedroom. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not really. The woman who slept beside me every night, though lately with her back turned, forming a silent barrier, no longer saw me as her partner. And if that had been the case for some time, what exactly was I still doing here? The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I went about my routine, showering, getting dressed, stepping into the kitchen just like I always did. She was already there, one hand wrapped around a coffee mug, the other scrolling through her phone. She glanced up at me briefly before looking away, her attention quickly absorbed elsewhere. For her, nothing had shifted. Last night's conversation had been erased, buried beneath whatever else filled her mind. She didn't recognize the weight of what had been said. She didn't care that I had lain awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, coming to terms with a realization I could no longer ignore. I was wasting my time. And in that moment, I knew. I was done. I didn't say anything. There was no dramatic speech about self-respect or the need to be valued. What would be the point? She had already made it clear where I stood in her life. No amount of words could change that. So I started planning. I checked the lease. Her name was the only one on it. The bills? Also under her name. This home, this life, was hers. That made my decision easier. There was nothing to fight over. I had enough money saved to leave without complications, enough to carve out a fresh start. The only question left was when. For the next few days, I continued my routine. I worked, came home, played along. But I had already started detaching. I began packing in small increments, just my belongings, the essentials. Clothes, electronics, important documents. Everything else? She could keep it. She never noticed. Not once did she question why my side of the closet was slowly emptying, why certain things were disappearing. She wasn't paying close enough attention to realize I was slipping away, and that only confirmed what I already knew. Leaving was the right decision. The night before I left, I sat in the living room, absorbing the space one last time. Once, this had been our home. Now it was just a place where two strangers coexisted. I wasn't going to be one of them anymore. By the following evening, I was gone. No note, no message, no farewell. Walking away was easier than I had imagined. I took only what I needed, 2 suitcases, my laptop, the bare essentials. There was no confrontation, no desperate attempt to stop me. I simply closed the door behind me and left her to deal with the reality of her choices. That first night alone felt strange, but not in the way I expected. There was no sorrow, no regret, only quiet, a stillness that was unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. I had rented a temporary place, a space untouched by the past. And as I sat there, surrounded by blank walls and empty rooms, I realized something. I hadn't felt this free in years. Meanwhile, she remained oblivious. I had anticipated her noticing immediately, expected my phone to light up with frantic messages. But that first night? Silence. The next morning? Still nothing. Curious, I checked my phone. No missed calls, no texts. At first, I assumed she had been out, staying elsewhere, but as the hours passed, a different thought took hold. Had she even realized I was gone? That question was finally answered late in the evening, when her name appeared on my screen. Where are you? Not are you okay? Not what happened? Not even why did you leave? Just 3 indifferent words, devoid of urgency or concern. I didn't respond. I wanted to see if she would follow up, if she would reach out with something that actually meant something. She didn't. No call, no second message, and that alone told me everything I needed to know. She could pretend nothing had changed, but soon reality would catch up to her. Rent was due soon. The bills would still come. She wouldn't have my paycheck to rely on anymore. Before I left, I crunched the numbers. I knew her salary, our expenses, and exactly what it would take to keep things afloat. It was doable, but only if she made some serious cutbacks. It wouldn't be smooth sailing. And sure enough, the strain became obvious fast. A week after I was gone, the first message arrived. The tone had shifted. Did you turn off autopay for the bills? I didn't answer. 2 days later, another message followed. We need to talk. Call me. She wasn't asking where I was. She wasn't pretending this was just a bump in the road. Reality had settled in. Now, she was alone for real. The same woman who used to joke with her friends about me being just a roommate was getting a taste of what that actually meant. No one to split the bills. No one to handle the upkeep. No one there at all. And I wasn't coming back. The messages kept coming. At first, they were spaced out, cautious, like she was testing the waters. When she realized I wasn't biting, she ramped up. The calls started. I ignored every single one. I didn't care what she had to say. I refused to let her hear my voice, to give her the illusion that she still had any claim over me. Then, one night, a longer message came through. Look, I know things got weird, but we need to talk. I feel like this has gone too far, and I don't understand why you're doing this. Can we meet? Why I was doing this? That part stuck with me. She still didn't get it. She had belittled me in front of her friends, brushed me off when I confronted her, made me feel like a background character in my own home. But now that things weren't convenient for her anymore, she wanted to talk. I ignored it. The next day, another message arrived. I don't want things to end this way. Can we at least have a conversation? Now, suddenly, it was about us. Now, suddenly, she cared about how this ended. I wasn't naive. I knew exactly what was happening. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. or had some revelation about how she treated me. She was reaching out because she didn't like dealing with the aftermath. Still, I was curious to see just how far she would go. So I agreed to meet. Not at the apartment, not anywhere private, a coffee shop, neutral ground, a public setting where she couldn't turn it into a spectacle. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting by the window. She looked different, not heartbroken, not remorseful, just unsettled. When she spotted me, she forced a smile. "Hey." I nodded, took a seat, and waited. Her fingers gripped her coffee cup tightly, like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "I don't even know where to begin." I stayed silent. She exhaled, her frustration creeping through. I think you overreacted. I didn't mean what I said like that, and if we just talk this through, we can fix it." I let the words settle before responding. "You think I left over one comment?" Her expression faltered, like the thought had never crossed her mind. I leaned forward slightly. "That wasn't a slip-up. That was how you really saw me. And that night, I realized I was done being in a marriage where I was nothing more than a roommate." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no words came. She knew I was right. Still, she tried. "I didn't mean it like that," she insisted. "I was just venting. My friends and I joke like that all the time." I shook my head. There's always truth in a joke. She had nothing to say to that. Silence stretched between us until she finally sighed and leaned back. "So that's it?" I nodded. "That's it." She stared down at her coffee, her face unreadable. But I saw it, the moment she realized she had pushed me too far, that there was no undoing this. I stood up. "Take care." And I walked away. For the first time in years, I wasn't questioning my place in my own relationship. I wasn't agonizing over whether I was being taken for granted, whether I was wasting my time trying to be seen by someone who never truly did. I had my answer. And now, I had my freedom. Over the next few weeks, she tried again. No grand gestures, just weak attempts to reopen the conversation. "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you want to talk." I never responded. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She missed what I did for her, the convenience, the stability, the comfort of having someone else there. But love, respect, those had never been part of the equation. A mutual acquaintance casually mentioned that, not long after I moved out, she had to downsize. The rent had become unmanageable on her own. In the end, she had no option but to give up the apartment, the one we had shared, though, if I'm being honest, it had always felt more like hers than ours. I won't deny that a small part of me felt a quiet sense of vindication when I heard. Not because I wanted her to struggle, but because reality had finally caught up with her. She had treated me as if I were easily replaceable, and now she had to face what it truly meant to be alone. Meanwhile, I moved on. I found a new place, smaller, but entirely mine. No compromises, no careful tiptoeing around someone else's moods. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like an accessory in my own home, something that simply occupied space. My world was calm, undisturbed, belonging to me in every possible way. And every morning when I woke up, I wasn't greeted by that familiar weight of irritation, bitterness, or the quiet sorrow that had settled so deeply into my marriage that I had almost stopped noticing it. Instead, I felt light. I felt unburdened. People love to imagine closure as some grand event, a final conversation, an overdue apology, a moment that neatly wraps up the past. But the truth is, closure isn't always about getting answers from the other person. Sometimes, it's simply realizing you don't need their regrets, their explanations, or their blessing to move forward. You just go. And that's exactly what I did. This story has come to an end. There is no harsher realization in a relationship than understanding you are no longer seen, valued, or respected. Love doesn't disappear overnight. It fades in indifference, in unspoken resentment, in neglect. But remember, no one should settle for being just a roommate in their own life. Respect cannot be begged for, and love cannot be forced. Sometimes, the strongest choice is not fighting for a place in someone's life, but walking away and choosing yourself. True freedom isn't just being alone, it's realizing you no longer depend on those who never truly valued you. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.